In 2002, the aerospace industry had a fixed price for a rocket, $65 million. Conventional wisdom said that was simply the cost of entry. If you wanted to go to Mars, you had to pay the tax. But one man looked at the same problem and saw something else. He didn't look at the sticker price. He looked at the periodic table. This is the story of how first principles thinking, a mental model as old as Aristotle, became the secret weapon of the most disruptive entrepreneur of our time. Most of us live our lives reasoning by analogy. We do things because they are like something else that was done before. It's a cognitive shortcut that is efficient but inherently incremental. Analogy allows you to build a better version of a horse and buggy. First principles allows you to invent the internal combustion engine. To think from first principles is to stop asking how is it usually done, and start asking what are the fundamental truths that cannot be reduced further. Take the SpaceX challenge. Elon Musk realized that the cost of a rocket wasn't dictated by the laws of physics. It was dictated by the laws of bureaucracy and legacy supply chains. He broke the rocket down to its material components: aerospace-grade aluminum, titanium, copper, and carbon fiber. Then he asked a simple question: what is the spot market value of those materials? He discovered that the raw materials cost only about 2% of the typical rocket price. The other 98% was dumb requirements and inefficiency. To solve impossible problems, Musk developed a rigorous 5-step algorithm that functions as an intellectual filter. Step 1. Make the requirements less dumb. Every requirement you are following must be questioned, no matter how smart the person was who gave it to you. Musk's rule is specific. Every requirement must have a person's name attached to it. You cannot accept that a requirement came from the legal department or the safety department. You need to know the name of the real human who decided it was necessary, and then you must challenge them. Step 2 of the blueprint is the most brutal for most organizations. Delete the part or process. Subtraction is a widely undervalued habit in management. We have a hardwired bias that makes us value gaining things twice as much as losing them. Musk forces his engineers to delete more than they are comfortable with. His heuristic is clear: if you aren't adding things back at least 10% of the time, you clearly didn't delete enough. You must strip the system to its barest bones before you even think about the next step. Only after you have questioned every requirement and deleted every non-essential part can you move to step 3. Simplify and optimize. The most common error of even the smartest leaders is to spend months optimizing a process that shouldn't exist in the first place. You can spend millions of dollars making a component lighter or stronger, but the ultimate optimization is to realize that the component is unnecessary and delete it. Never simplify what you should have deleted. Step 4. Accelerate cycle time. Once you are working on the right things, and you've stripped away the fluff, then you push for velocity. But there is a warning. If you're digging your grave, don't dig faster. Speed is a multiplier of direction. If your direction is derived from first principles, speed is your competitive moat. If your direction is derived from bad analogies, speed is your downfall. Finally, step 5. Automate. This is where most people start, and it's why they fail. Musk admitted to production hell at Tesla because he tried to automate every step before the requirements had been questioned and the bugs were shaken out. In the first principles blueprint, automation is the last lever you pull. You wait until the requirements are challenged, the parts are deleted, the design is optimized, and the cycle is accelerated. This framework isn't just for rocket science or electric vehicles. It is a universal architecture for high-stakes decision-making, whether you are navigating a B2B negotiation, a career pivot, or a technological shift. The first principles approach requires you to discard inherited beliefs and face the raw data of reality. It is the discipline of looking past the form of a solution and focusing entirely on its function. To apply this, you must engage in what is known as Socratic questioning. You have to interrogate your own mind. Why do I think this is true? What if I thought the opposite? What are the sources of my data? If you can't get down to a law of physics or a fundamental truth, you are likely operating on a shared belief that might be outdated. Applying this to wealth building requires a total abandonment of conventional wisdom. Most people reason by analogy. They buy a house because their parents did, or invest in a 401k because it is the standard. First principles asks, what is the fundamental purpose of capital? It is a tool to buy back your time. To build wealth in 2026, you do not look for a job. You look for an unfair advantage in a high RPM sector. You break down the economics of a niche like digital assets or specialized AI services and identify where the input to output ratio is most skewed in your favor. Your career strategy should follow the same blueprint. Analogy says you must spend a decade paying your dues in an industry. First Principles asks, what is the actual requirement for progress? It is almost always the ability to solve a high-value problem that others find impossible. By using the Socratic method on your own skills, you can identify your circle of competence, the area where you have an irreducible advantage. Instead of competing in a saturated market, you use first principles to engineer a micro-niche moat, where you are the only logical choice for a client or employer. In high-stakes decision-making, the greatest danger is operating on a map that no longer matches the territory. We often treat legacy business practices as if they are laws of nature, when they are really just shared beliefs that have not been challenged. To navigate the volatility of 2026, you must run an assumption audit on every major choice. Why must this be true? What if the exact opposite were the path to success? By stripping away these layers, you reach a margin of safety that protects you when others are blinded by their reliance on analogy. In business, reasoning from analogy leads to red oceans of intense competition where companies fight over the same customers with nearly identical products. First principles thinking allows you to identify blue oceans, uncontested market spaces where competition is irrelevant. By breaking a business model down to its core value proposition and removing any features that were only added just in case, you can create a leap in value while simultaneously lowering costs. This is how companies like Marvel or Stitch Fix redefined their industries. They did not look at what competitors were doing. They looked at what customers actually needed, at a fundamental level. This mindset shift extends even into personal habits. Most people attempt to solve impossibilities like chronic stress or lack of time by adding more tasks or tools. A first principles analysis identifies the irreducible elements of your day. You ask, what is the absolute minimum I need to do to achieve my objective? This often reveals that 80% of your current efforts are simply symptoms of bad requirements or legacy habits that should be deleted rather than optimized. By rebuilding your routine from the discovered truths of your own biology and psychology, you automate your productivity and gain time you did not know you had. Thinking from first principles is significantly harder than reasoning by analogy. It takes more mental energy to build a solution from the ground up than it does to copy a best practice. But the payoff is a trajectory that others cannot even see, let alone follow. You are no longer making small improvements to a bicycle. You are inventing the snowmobile while everyone else is still arguing about the price of tires. Ultimately, first principles thinking separates those who iterate from those who innovate. It requires a higher tolerance for risk and a willingness to be wrong, as long as you are not confidently wrong, until the data proves you right. While the analogical thinker is satisfied with continuous improvement of an existing form, the first principles thinker is hunting for the radical improvement of the function. In the era of AI and rapid industry shifts, this ability to reason from the core is the only durable competitive advantage. To conduct a successful assumption audit, you must first acknowledge the existence of the entropy trap. In strategic planning, entropy is the natural tendency for systems, processes, and beliefs to become increasingly complex and disorganized over time. Most creators and executives fail because they attempt to manage this complexity by adding more layers of information. However, in heavy-tailed decision, spaces where outcomes are volatile and unpredictable, adding more information without a foundation of fundamental truths actually increases your uncertainty. This is the IOpenER paradox. Information opens the door to more variables, and if those variables aren't anchored, entropy resets. Step 1 of the audit is the axiom identification. You must isolate the 3 things you are treating as absolute facts about your current goal. For a US professional, this might be the assumption that high-income growth requires a graduate degree, or business expansion requires a physical office in a major hub. Once isolated, you apply the law of physics test. You ask, is this belief mandated by the irreducible laws of nature, or is it a socially constructed recommendation masquerading as a rule? As Musk suggests, any rule not dictated by physics is merely a suggestion that can, and likely should, be challenged. Step 2 is the origin search. For every requirement you are currently following, you must attach a specific person's name to it. You cannot accept that a requirement came from the legal department or standard industry practice. You need to identify the real human who decided that process was necessary. If the requirement exists only because we've always done it this way, it is a prime candidate for the delete phase of the blueprint. This search for origin prevents functional fixedness, a cognitive bias where you focus on the form of a legacy solution rather than the function it was originally meant to serve. Step 3 involves Cartesian doubt. You must temporarily adopt a position that every obstacle you perceive is an illusion created by false data. This mindset allows you to find the activation energy, the minimum effort or energy required to trigger a massive non-linear result. By assuming the map you've been given is wrong, you are forced to look at the territory of reality. In the creator economy of 2026, this means ignoring saturated niche maps and looking at the raw data of viewer behavior to find blue oceans where demand is high but quality content is non-existent. By completing this audit, you build a margin of safety into your strategy. While your competitors are busy making small, incremental improvements to a bicycle, a process based on analogy, you are using first principles to invent the snowmobile. You are no longer competing on price or effort. You are competing on the fundamental efficiency of your logic. This approach creates anti-fragility, where your business or career actually gains strength from the chaos and industry shifts that destroy those who are tethered to analogical thinking. Applying these protocols to the architecture of your life requires the same assumption audit on your capital. Most people treat wealth as a passive accumulation of currency, but a first principles analysis reveals it as a functional unit of instrumental power designed to buy back your future. The 1% do not invest in products, which are often just complex Aladdin versions of basic truths. They invest in functions. They strip away the legacy requirement of diversified mediocrity and look at the irreducible constituents of value: asymmetric risk, scarcity, and utility. By identifying where these fundamental truths intersect, they build portfolios that structurally dominate volatility rather than just reacting to it. Capital allocation then becomes an exercise in complexity deletion. Conventional wisdom suggests you should follow the herd into standard index funds or whatever asset is currently trending on social media. First principles thinking forces a different question. What is the irreducible reason this asset produces a return? If the answer is because everyone else is buying it, you have found an analogy-driven bubble. High-intent allocators focus on the margin of safety provided by the asset's core function. They look for the activation energy required to trigger nonlinear growth and position themselves at the source. This is how the elite leverage digital capital and intellectual moats to achieve returns that seem impossible to the analogical thinker. Asset protection follows this same rigorous architecture. Reasoning from the first principles of law and geography, the high-intent individual doesn't wait for a crisis to react. They design their holdings to be structural fortresses. They question the requirement of being tethered to a single jurisdiction or a single currency. By breaking down the concept of sovereignty into its basic components: control, access, and liability, they reconstruct their assets across legal frameworks that prioritize anti-fragility. This protocol ensures their legacy is protected not by the hope that the system works, but by the structural design that makes failure structurally difficult. Ultimately, the first principles blueprint separates the dreamers who iterate from the doers who innovate. It is the choice between the bicycle of analogy and the snowmobile of fundamental truths. One relies on the world remaining static. The other is built for the world as it actually is. This intellectual discipline is the only true competitive moat in the age of AI. It requires you to be the only person in the room who truly understands the why while everyone else is guessing at the how. It is the final transition from being a student of shared beliefs to being the architect of your own reality. If you are ready to stop reasoning by analogy and start solving for the fundamentals, subscribe to High-10. We don't provide opinions, we provide the frameworks. Each week, we will strip away the noise of a new, impossible problem and hand you the core truths required to master it. The future belongs to the high-intent thinker, the one who dares to ask why until the only thing left is the truth. Join us as we map the territory of 2026, one blueprint at a time. This has been the First Principles Blueprint. Your intellectual edge starts here.